Hello, my friends. How are you today? It's Sue from Sue Pellin Designs, and today I'm going to take you shopping with me. Let's see the products that I found at Harbor Freight Tools in order to accessorize my sewing room. So let's go ahead and get started with our shopping trip at Harbor Freight Tools. Now, I know there's many videos out there about Harbor Freight Tools and all the wonderful things that you can find there, but I found a couple of special tools that I want to share with you that are a little bit different from the typical things like the magnetic pin picker upper, right? Those are definitely useful, and you can find those at Harbor Freight Tools. Then you have that little dish that holds onto your pins. I have one in the studio here somewhere, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to show you some wonderful tools that are going to accessorize my Husky table that I found at Home Depot. Okay, so let's jump right into that. But before I do, let me know that you can see me and hear me and that everything is working properly. So it seems like everything's good. And I'm going to just go over to my overhead camera. I want to see what that looks like. Oh, look at that. That's our project from last week. And I want to let you know that I haven't touched that Blue Moons project from last week. So we're going to get started with that today after I take you on this little shopping journey with me. So I'm going to come back here to my table so I can show you this Husky table and how I'm going to accessorize it with my Harbor Freight tools. So let me pull this table back so that you can see, and I'm going to take off that banner so that you can see the side of the table. So let me get rid of that banner that just tells you who I am and where you're going to find me. Okay. Now let's get started and take a look at this Harbor Freight Tools table. I'm sorry, at this the table that I found. It's a Husky table, and I found it at Home Depot. So the first thing is that Husky table is on wheels, and that is really spectacular for me because I have a very small sewing space here. So I'm able to move that around and put it exactly where I need it. So I'm trying to actually take off the banner, and instead I showed a different banner. I'm trying to get rid of them all. Let's see. Oh, good morning, Elaine. Hi, you're okay on YouTube. Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. So let's see. I can't seem to get rid of the SuePellinDesigns.com. I'm trying to get rid of that. We don't need any banner on there, and yet it is. They're all showing. Okay. Somehow I'm not able to get rid of that. And it's right where I want to show you where on the side of my table I'm going to be putting my tools. So let's go ahead and use the other side of this table by pulling it over so you can see what I'm going to do on this side of the table over here. So I'm going to move my pressing station so that you can see that side of the table a little bit better. So the first thing that I have on the side of this table is it is what they call a sit and snip, and it's got my ahead of the curve member cup in there with my rotary cutters and other little tools that I like to keep handy. So that's right there on the end, and I'm going to pull it back a little bit more. Okay, and under there is a little snippet bag, so I can put anything in there that I snip off of the ends of my fabrics. So anytime I have little strings and little bits, I'm going to throw it right there in my sit and snip, and that gets everything out of the way so it's not on top of my table when I need to cut. Then I have my pressing surface. I've got a nice big pressing surface over here, and it's on top of a sewing machine table. And that's a sewing machine that I very rarely use. So I keep it covered over with my ironing board over here. And that's really, really helpful to have that full size ironing board. when I don't need the full-size ironing board, I grab this little one right here. All right, so what did I grab from Harbor Freight Tools that's going to really make my sewing space a little bit nicer? Well, the first thing I grabbed were these little hooks right here. And I'll show you these. I'll point the camera downward in just a minute so you can see the little hooks that I purchased. And these little hooks right here are not perfect for me because the way that they push back this way, it's hard to get my tools onto those little hooks. So I don't love these hooks that I bought from Harbor Freight. However, I feel like with a good pair of pliers, I'm going to be able to bend this out a little bit and I'll be able to hook my tools right on those little hooks. And they can hang right here on the side of my table. So I'm going to be putting things on the side of the table. So I'm going to take off my sit and snip. That way you can see how those things are going to attach right to the side of that table. So the first thing that I purchased was a power strip. And this power strip has 2 USB ports right here. So I think this power strip is going to be incredibly helpful to organize all of my power cables when I am up here on my Husky table. So that Husky table has metal sides. And I'm going to be able to use this. This is a magnet. So I'm going to be able to use this magnet. My goodness, they package these things like Fort Knox, don't they? So I'm trying to get this out for you easily, but I'm just going to have to rip open that package. So I've got this wonderful power strip here. Yep, rip it open. Okay, there we go. And on that power strip are some really strong magnets, and they're non-marring magnets. So I'm going to be able to put that right here on the side of my table. I love that. Now I could also put this down on the leg of the table as well. So not only does this table have this side piece right here, but there's also a leg of the table that is metal. So I'm going to be able to put this down on that leg of the table as well. So you're seeing my messy sewing room right here, but I just want to show you the cool products that I found. So look at that. I just love the way it attaches so beautifully. And I can put it down here on the bottom leg, or I can put it right here, and then the cord is going to be off the bottom and off to the side, or I can put this right here. So wherever you feel it's going to be best for your use. So I think that I'm going to put it all the way down there, have it nice and level with that bottom, and then I can plug it in and I'll still be able to move this table around, but I have that wonderful magnetic strip. Maybe I'm going to put it way down here. That's another option. And I mentioned the sit and snip. Well, what I didn't purchase at Harbor Freight was they do have a cup holder, and their cup holders are also magnetic. The next time I go, I'm going to grab that cup holder, but I didn't want to grab it yet because I want to see what I can fit over here. And I found something new that's really, really cool. So I just purchased this paper towel holder. So what am I going to use this paper towel holder for? Well, I'm going to use that to hold my Misty Fuse. So let's go ahead and take that out of the package and see how that's going to work for our Misty Fuse. So normally I buy my Misty Fuse in 100-yard rolls like this, and I need a way to be able to dispense that Misty Fuse. So let's go ahead and see if this is going to work. I'm going to put this right on the side of my table and just slide these in. And look at that. Oh my goodness. Is that the perfect place for my Misty Fuse? Now, these magnets are bigger than the side of the table, but they're really, really strong. And I think it's going to work out just fine, even though these magnets are a little bit bigger than the table. So they're not holding onto the table under this area down here. So I was a little concerned because this area is not that large. So I didn't buy the cup holder because I wanted to see how deep this was and how this product was going to fit on here before buying the cup holder. Now I have a similar side on the opposite side of my table. So I'm going to be able to get the cup holders and put them over the other side of the table because I definitely want my tool cup. That's really important to me to have my tool cup handy. I'm not that concerned about this trash bin, so I'm going to get rid of this piece. I keep knocking it off the table. It clamps on, but I keep knocking it off. And if the magnetic cup holder fits right here, that's going to be the perfect place for my cup, so I don't knock this cup off the table as well. So I'm going to bring you overhead and I'm going to show you one more magnetic tool that I purchased in order to make the best use out of that Husky table. So let's go ahead, and I've got to get my table back in place here so you can see it on the overhead camera. And I'm actually bringing it forward so you can see. I want you to see the drawer under the table. There we go. And I'm going to pull out that drawer so you can see it. All right, let's go. So we're switching over to our overhead camera, and I'm going to come over here and open up that drawer so you can see it. And I put the camera the wrong way. The drawer's over on this side, and the camera's not quite angled the right way. So I tell you what, we're going to slide our table back. And I'll be able to show you that drawer inside that table. So let me get this out of the way, and here we go. So normally in this drawer, I used to store all of my books and my rotary cutters, etc. But I saw a suggestion to use magnets to separate your thread storage. So I just love that idea of using the magnets to separate your thread storage. So I went ahead and I bought a couple of extra magnets. Now these magnets, again, they come from Harbor Freight. They are used as tool storage. So in your workshop, you could hang up all of your metal tools, and you could have your metal tools stick to these magnets. Now, it's not working too well for my rotary cutter because there's just not enough metal on the rotary cutter to hold that. But say I had a pair of scissors. Well, those aren't magnetic either. Isn't that interesting? My scissors don't stick there. But things like your screwdrivers and all of those other tools that you have should stick right on these magnets and be able to hang this up or hang up knives in your kitchen, and everything's going to stick to those magnets. Let's try that again. Yeah, it's pretty good. It holds up pretty well even with the rotary cutters. But what I've decided is that I want to put these magnets inside my drawer. Then I'm going to be able to space them out exactly for the sizes of the spools that I want to separate. So I'm just going to separate them a little bit more, and look, my spools for my 2D thread fit beautifully right here. So let's go ahead and move it over this side so you can see that a little bit better. My 2D thread fits right in there. All I have to do is separate these as much as the thread spool. Then I'm going to be able to line up all of my 2D threads right here between these magnets. And I'll add another one so it goes all the way across. Now, these magnets are they're not expensive, but you're going to need a lot of these in order to divide up your thread storage. But I think they're quite brilliant to have the thread storage in these wide drawers. I mean, that's a big drawer. You can fit a lot of spools of thread, and it's all out there for you to see. You can see all of those beautiful colors. So I think that the method of storing is quite brilliant. And that was a really good purchase from Harbor Freight. Now, I think they run about $5 a piece, and we are going to need quite a few of them. So I'm just going to pick up a couple each time I go to Harbor Freight Tools, and then I'll have plenty over time to separate all of my threads. But it is going to be a little bit of an investment, but I love the way that it shows. And my thread storage racks on the walls, those aren't cheap either. Now, I already have those, so I hate to not use them, but they keep breaking. Those little wooden pieces, they keep breaking, and I get less and less storage as each one of those breaks off. So let's look at our little hooks right here. If I'm able to bend this hook out, then I'll be able to store my tools right on the side of my this Husky table. So these are wonderful magnetic hooks, and I can just hook on 1, 2, or more, 3 or more of these tools and hold all my tools right on the side of the table, so they'll be right there where I need them. Now, this one comes off pretty easily, but my bigger tools, things like my big squares, they're too deep. The hole here is too deep, so I'm not able to hook that on. So I want to loosen up that hook, open it up a bit, and see if I can get all of my tools to hook on there. But at least if I can get my Parts and More tools and my Leaves Galore tools hanging on the side of my table, they're going to be off of the table and exactly where I need them when I need them. So let me come back to you, and we're going to talk about making our Blue Moons quilt. Before I do, I wanted to share with you a project that I've been working on, and I'm super excited that I was able to get a quilt quilted on my long arm. So I want to show you that quilt because I just took it off the long arm last night. So this quilt is one of the quilts that I teach in the membership, and this one is a full size. It's not quite a full size quilt. This would probably fit beautifully on a twin bed as a coverlet, not to cover the pillows. It's not long enough, but this is a nice size quilt. A great lap quilt, but it's even a little bit bigger than a lap quilt. When we write the pattern for this, we are going to bring it down to lap quilt size. So isn't this a pretty quilt? I was so thrilled to take this off of my long arm and trim up the edges and get it ready for binding. Now, I haven't done the binding yet. It needs to be a bias binding because I'm going to curve the binding around the curve in the design. So even though I cut it straight, when I put the binding on, I'm going to curve that around. And for those of you in the membership, you have a video about doing scalloped edge quilts and how I put that curve binding on my quilts. So this will be another lesson when we do Janie's coat quilt, which is going to be in the membership. I think it's in June, but I'm not 100% sure. So I was anxious to get that quilt ready so that I could teach that one in June. Now I do have another version of that quilt up here, and this is the one we're going to do in the class. So if that big quilt is a little intimidating to you, this table runner size is perfect to test out the technique, learn how to do your curve binding, and make a beautiful project that you can use in your home. So that is what I've been working on this week, and I haven't made any progress on my Blue Moons quilt. So I'm going to pull my station back here again, now that we don't need to see the sides. And I'm going to get ready to work on those Blue Moon blocks with you. So the last time we were here, we actually cut out one of the Blue Moon blocks. And as I said, I haven't progressed on that project. I'm just trying to adjust my camera here so you can see the table a little bit better. There we go. So I haven't progressed on that project because I was doing my machine quilting, and it was really important for me to get that quilt done. That is one of the quilts that I'm going to be making for Island Boutique when I release my line of fabric. That is for the fall winter line, and I won't be releasing that pattern until that fall winter line is released. So I'm working on the pattern, but I needed to have that quilt for the front of the pattern. So whether it will be that quilt or the one I make with the Island Boutique fabrics, I wanted to get a quilt ready so that I could show different ways to color that quilt in order to make it beautiful, both with the Island Boutique fabric and with regular cottons, because I often do regular cottons when I applique. I don't always use batiks. And this is a great example of that. Yesterday, I went to the store to buy some more yellow fabrics. I only had a little bit of this yellow fabric that I used to make last week's moon. So I knew I needed to dive into my yellow stash and find more yellow fabrics. Well, lo and behold, I dove into my yellow stash and it was depleted. There was nothing left to my yellows. So I went to the store and I picked up all of these beautiful yellows. So not only did I limit myself to batiks, I did not limit myself to batiks. I picked up prints as well. Anything that would look pretty inside that moon shape. So I'm cutting out my 6-inch squares in order to make that moon quilt. And how many 6-inch squares do I need? Well, I believe, let me see how many blocks we're going to make. I've got all of my blocks cut out and ready to go. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 blocks. So I'm going to need 17 of these 6-inch squares to go inside my moons. So here's a little tip. We're putting 6 inches of Misty Fuse on the back of our sky fabric before we cut our moons. Then we're going to place our yellow fabric over that 6-inch square of Misty Fuse. It may not fit perfectly, and I didn't have a 6-inch piece of this yellow fabric, so it's a little bit shy. It's not quite big enough. Well, I'm looking at cutting this fabric, and it's not quite big enough. Some of the fabrics I can get 6 inches out of, and some of them are a little bit less. I'm going to be okay, even if that fabric is a little bit less than 6 inches. I just have to be careful when I make the blocks that if there's Misty Fuse sticking out the ends, and there's no fabric covering over the Misty Fuse right over here. Just make sure you use a pressing sheet whenever you're pressing these blocks so that Misty Fuse doesn't stick to your ironing board. That's the only caution I need to give you. Generally, when we make this pattern, if you stick to 6-inch squares, you don't have that problem. But if your fabrics are a little bit shy and you don't want to waste that fabric, go ahead and use a slightly smaller piece, but be careful that that Misty Fuse doesn't stick to your iron. So last week we got all of our squares prepared and ready to go. We put a 6-inch square of Misty Fuse on the back of this 6.5-inch square of our sky fabric. And now I'm going to cut those out using my Hearts and More tool. And I'm going to use the rotating mat from Caterpillar. Now, this mat from Caterpillar, I'm trying to get used to it. It's a little bit different than my Martelli mat. The Martelli mat is the one that I'm really accustomed to using. And so I'm finding this one a little different. It works a little differently. It's not any better or worse. It's just different. So it does have the markings that I love having on my mat. It's got that cross marking here and straight lines again this way. So it's got that grid on it. So I can fold my fabric into a triangle. I can place this edge on the straight line of the board, and I'll press this. I'll place this point up here on the centering line here on my mat. So I've got that cross on my mat. The bottom of the triangle is going on the horizontal cross. The point of the triangle is going straight up and down on that vertical cross. That way I can center my 5-inch tool right on that fabric because there's a cross on my tool as well. So by placing the fabric on a cross on the board, placing that cross on the tool right on top, I know I'm centering this fabric beautifully. So I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to lift up a little bit. So I just have to lift up my pressure to rotate that mat, and that really works well. Oh, I missed a thread, but that's good. Okay, so I need to do this for all of the 17 pieces. So I'm just going to make a stack here of the circles and a stack here of the squares. Now, I told you we're going to make this quilt together. So I'm actually going to be making this quilt. So I'm going to take the time to cut all of my squares. So go get a cup of tea, go get a project that you're working on so that you can cut along with me. And I'm watching my clock. We just started this project, and I want to work on this project for about 25 minutes today. If I work in 25-minute increments, this quilt will take me, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 of those 25-minute segments. It's not that big of a quilt. It's a pretty simple quilt. So let's see in 25 minutes how much of this we can get done so we can gauge how much time this project is going to take. Most of this project takes time in the stitching. So I would like to get to the stitching phase today. After I get all of these cut, I've got one of these ready to go. So before we leave today, I'm going to have one of these stitched with you so you can see that process as well. But because we're actually making the quilt together, I don't want to spend the whole day stitching. I want to just stitch one of these blocks. So instead, I'm going to spend my time cutting and making sure I get all of these circles cut out beautifully from the squares. Then I'll cut the rest of my yellow 6-inch squares. We will fuse these down and get them all ready for stitching before our next segment. Okay, now I won't do all of the stitching on camera. I'll just do one, just so I can give you some of the ins and outs of stitching these circles. When you're making the Blue Moons quilt, you might not even realize it, but you're going to be doing some reverse applique as well as regular applique. Now, if that sounds intimidating, it's not at all once you realize what I mean by some of your applique is reverse applique and some of it is just regular applique. It's just as easy to do reverse applique as it is to do regular applique when you're fusing your fabrics. So people got scared of reverse applique when it was done as a hand applique technique, because it's like needle turn applique, but it's backwards, right? You're turning under your edges as you stitch, and it feels a little bit awkward because we're used to hand appliquing a certain way. When we reverse applique, it's like almost like looking in a mirror, right? When you're doing applique with fusible applique, reverse applique is no issue whatsoever. It's exactly the same. All you have to know is what fabric is your fusible on. So when we made these blocks, we put the fusible on our dark fabric. And when we fuse our moons down, our fusible stays on our dark fabric. So whenever we're stitching, our blanket stitch goes toward our dark fabric. And that is the same, whether it's applique or reverse applique. Your stitching goes toward the fabric that has the fusible. So after I get done cutting these, I will stitch one of these with you, and I'll show you the difference between the applique and the reverse applique on my sample. So let's see, it's only taking me about 5 minutes so far to cut out these moons. So we're going to keep going. I will keep my eye on the time because I don't want to waste your time, but I also want to show you how much you can get accomplished in a short period of time. Now, we fused our fabrics last week, and when you fuse your fabrics a week ago, then the fusible is no longer sticky or tacky when you go to do your cutting. If I had cut these the same day as doing the fusible, it's likely that the fusible would stick to my tool, and it kind of drives me a little bit crazy when that happens. Now, because I did the fusible a week ago, I could even fold this with the pretty side out. I've been folding with the Misty Fuse side out. It's just a habit to do that because I don't want the Misty Fuse sticking to itself while it's still warm. So if I don't have a whole week to wait, or actually it's probably more like an hour or two to wait. If I don't have that time to wait before cutting, then I will fold my fabrics with the fusible to the outside. That way it doesn't stick together when I cut. But now that the fusible is completely cool, I can put fusible sides together and not have any trouble whatsoever. But I have gotten in the habit of folding so that the fusible side is out, just in case I've warmed up that fusible with, maybe I needed to iron a wrinkle out or something. So if I ever touch that fusible with my iron, obviously on a pressing sheet, but if I ever warm up that fusible with an iron, it's going to get sticky again. So I'd have to wait another hour or so before cutting these pieces. So it's just habit to fold with the fusible side out like this. So pretty sides together, fusible side is out. That way, if there's any tackiness to the fusible at all, it will stick to your board and it will stick to your ruler, but it won't stick together. If you cut when your fusible is still warm, and this piece right here, if you're pushing it together and cutting that folded, when this sticks together, it's really hard to get it apart. So I do recommend waiting an hour before cutting your fused pieces. Now, the Misty Fuse website says 15 minutes. That's all the time it takes for your fabric to go back to its natural dry state, where your fusible is no longer tacky. However, I find that when I'm doing fusibles, I'm often stacking up my fabrics, and those fabrics kind of insulate each other, right? They keep the warmth in. So it takes a little bit longer for all of those layers to cool. If you have one layer of fabric and one layer of Misty Fuse, you're going to be golden. It's not going to take long at all for that fabric to cool. But if you do it like I do, and you're doing all of your fabrics at the same time for a big project, instead of laying those fabrics all over the house on the backs of chairs or the back of your couch, I just stack them up and I wait till the next day to start cutting. As long as your fusibles aren't touching each other, you can stack them up just like this, one after the other. So I'm on my very last moon shape that I'm cutting. Okay, we're going to get that last one cut. And by doing an assembly line like this, I find it a little bit easier and a little bit faster than making each moon block individually like we did last week. So we're only about 10 minutes in for cutting, and I'm going to grab my 4-inch Hearts and More tool. From the center of this 5-inch circle, we are going to cut a 4-inch circle. Now, does it matter if it's centered? Well, it doesn't really matter if it's centered. But if you center one circle inside the other, you're going to create a circle ring that you can use for another project. If I don't center them, I end up with a strange little ring, but this little ring is perfect. It's about it's exactly half of an inch wide, and I can use that on a separate project. So I am going to make my all of my rings centered. That way I have the opportunity to use those for another quilt. So I'm centering it by eye. You could put it on your board and measure exactly a half of an inch over from your previous cut. But I find it's pretty easy to center this by eye, and I don't have to take all that time to lay this on my board, on those crosshairs of the board, or even on the straight lines of the board, so I can measure that 1/2 inch. I'm just going to center it by eye just like that. I'm going to cut halfway around, then go ahead and move your rotating mat so you can get the other half comfortably without cutting in an awkward position. All right, we're just about halfway. We're a little bit more than halfway through our cutting. So I'll do a little bit more. And if you missed us last week, doing this one after the other really is a time saver. So I'm going to get them all done in just about 15 minutes here. And then we'll start pressing those with our yellow fabric. So I'll bring my pressing mat back over here. In fact, I'm going to heat up my my small Oliso iron. I love my Oliso iron because it is small. And when I'm doing detail work like this, I like having the control of that small Oliso iron. When I'm fusing my fabric, I want the biggest iron possible so I can cover as much ground as I can. But when I'm fusing delicate things like stems and little leaves, that small Aliso iron is just magical. I just love the way that it works. I love the little iron shoe on the bottom so that it protects my work surface because it's resting on a little silicone iron shoe. And it's a thick one. It's not like a thin one that I used to have that got too warm and actually really almost warmed up and almost burned my board on occasion when I was using it with a regular flat iron. Now, the Aliso iron that I use for fusing, the big one, has those feet and it goes up on the feet, and that prevents scorching. But the little one doesn't have those feet. So the iron shoe that it sits on is a nice thick silicone pad, and nothing scorches when it's on that silicone pad. So that is a favorite of mine, both of those Aliso irons. Okay, I'm getting used to the Caterpillar swivel mat as well. And it's nice. It's a nice product. It is translucent, so I could absolutely put this on top of my Caterpillar light board and see right through it. Now, I'm not so sure that I really see an advantage to that when I'm doing this type of cutting. I don't really need the light board underneath, but it's a possibility. You know, if you have a need for that, that translucent mat is nice. Now, what is nice about the mat is that it's less expensive than the Martelli one. So it is a good mat. I will put a link to it under the show notes. I just talked to Caterpillar, and I think rather than carrying all of their products in my shop, I'm just going to give you an affiliate link. That way they can know that you're one of my students, and you'll be able to get the product shipped directly from Caterpillar. What happens when I carry a lot of products in my shop is the shipping is prohibitive. Shipping it twice, once from Caterpillar to me and once from me to you, is double the shipping and double the environmental impact. So it's really much better if I'm able to provide you with an affiliate link. That way they know you're one of my students, you'll get a great price, and I'll get a little tiny bit of a commission on those products. But that's why I'm testing out these products. But know that I will give you my honest opinion. I'm going to use this rotating mat for a while before I can recommend it. I'm finding it today very easy to use. I love my Martelli mat as well. This one is quite a bit less expensive, and that's one of the best features of it. And it's working quite well, but I want to use it for 6 months. I want to use it for some time so that I can see how that mat holds up to all of this cutting, because when you're cutting curves, your mat can take a beating. All of these curves, the way that you're holding your rotary cutter and curving it around, it doesn't heal quite as well as when you're doing straight lines. Those self-healing mats aren't quite as self-healing when you're cutting all of these curves. So I like to check out that mat, make sure that it's going to hold up well for you before I recommend it. So stay tuned. I will do another segment on the Caterpillar products once I've had a really good time period in order to test them out. So far, I like them, but I do not want to make a firm recommendation until I've used them for at least a couple of months. Okay, now I have been using my Caterpillar light table. That one I know I love, but this rotating mat is something that's really new to me. So hold off. I'm going to just continue using it, and then I'll let you know how I like it. So there we go. We're 15 minutes into cutting, maybe 20 minutes into cutting, and I've got all of my blue moons cut for the entire quilt. Now I'm going to need to fuse them. So I'm going to grab my fusing board, the small board that I use for fusing on my demos. And I'm going to put that board right up on my table here. Now, I love this board. It has a stand that I can use that'll stand it up taller, but I think I'll leave this one down for now. And I'm going to, let me put my other kit over here. I'm going to grab my applique pressing sheet. Once again, I didn't cut those squares exactly perfect. Some of them were a little bit smaller than 6 inches. So I'm going to use my pressing board and my mat in order to protect my work surface. I don't really need this to protect my iron if I'm pressing it with the fusible side down. But today I'm going to press this with the fusible side up. These squares were 6.5 inches. The fusible is 6 inches. So now I have to get that fusible covered up with my yellow fabric. So let's see. There we go. Okay. So now I've got my yellow fabric covering up the fusible. And I'm going to take one of my moons and just place it inside there. And let me press that, and then I'll be able to hold it up and show you what I just did. So we're pressing our moon just like this. So we have offset our little 4-inch circle inside the bigger 5-inch circle. Then remember that it's our black that was fused. So we're going to stitch with our blanket stitch going toward the black here, and we're going to stitch with our blanket stitch going toward the black here. This is called a reverse applique when it's here, because the black fabric is going over the yellow fabric. That's what makes it a reverse applique. Here, our black fabric is going over our yellow fabric, okay? So we're appliquing this edge right here, and we're appliquing this edge right here. It's the same as regular applique, but because the yellow is underneath, they're calling that a reverse applique. Now let's go over to our sewing machine, and I'm going to put my camera down on my sewing machine so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So let me just get my station set up with my block. Now, once again, when you stitch this moon, if you allow your fabric to cool completely, this is the moon that I made last week. Now my fabric has cooled completely. That fusible will not gum up your needle at all. Now, if you've just fused it and it's still warm and sticky, it can stick to your needle. So you have to give yourself that 15 minutes for your fusible to cool. Now, that's not true with all of the fusibles that are out there. If you use Steam-A-Seam 2, it's got that sticky side that makes your fusible repositionable. That's what sticks to your needle. In the case of Misty Fuse, it will not stick to your needle when it's cool. So just give it a couple of minutes to cool, and we are ready to go to our sewing machine. So let me get the angle of the camera correct. And we want to talk about what threads we're going to use for that fabric. So I did pull out a couple of blue threads as well as some black thread. I want to see what the right color is for this project. And I didn't realize that my moon fabric is really black. The background is black. The other moon quilt that I did, the background was blue. Excuse me. So I pulled out these blue threads, and they are too blue for this project. So I'm actually just going to use my Aurifil black thread. Now, you know me, I love to use variegated thread, but in this case, I don't need a variegated thread because that black thread is going to look best on the black background. It's going to disappear right into that black background. So it's not going to be the best for you to see what I'm doing on the sewing machine. But because we are actually making this quilt together, I am not going to use yellow thread, a big contrasting thread. Instead, I will just explain to you everything that I am doing. And right now I'm changing my foot. I'm going to go from my closed foot that has my 1/4 of an inch marking. So that's what I use for piecing. When I'm doing applique, I go for this big open toe foot. Now my machine also has a walking foot that fits down right inside of that open toe foot. So I'm going to put the foot on. I'm going to tighten it up with my screwdriver so it's nice and tight. Okay, then I'm going to engage my walking foot. And I was thinking I was using blue thread, so I put a blue bobbin in. Well, because it's navy blue, I'm not going to concern myself with the bobbin color. That's going to stay on the bottom anyway if my tension is correct. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch the blue moon that I made a couple of last week. So when I'm stitching my blue moon, I'm going to use my blanket stitch, and I'm going to use a single blanket stitch. That's going to go down and across with that blanket stitch. Now I put the needle down to make sure that I've lost my foot pedal here from my machine. Where did it go? Oh my goodness, here it is. Okay. All right, I'm putting my needle down and it goes in the right hand position. Then when I go down and across, my stitch stays right on the outside edge of that applique. And I'm going to bring you in a little closer so you're able to see the actual stitching being formed on that applique piece. So it's going to go down and across, and the down stitch, the straight stitch, is following the edge of the applique. The needle actually grazes that applique edge, but the stitch is actually on the yellow fabric. But it's so close to the edge of the applique that it looks like it completes the applique piece, the black piece. It's your final stitch along that black edge that keeps all of the fraying from happening. It keeps all of those edge threads in place. So I'm going to do that fairly slowly. But as you get better at this, you're going in a simple circle. I'm using the pressure from my finger right here in order to turn that fabric around in a circle. So once I find the right pivot point for my fingers to hold on to, it's pretty easy to direct this thread or this stitch around in that circle. Now, because I do have a little bit of color on this moon block, I'll be able to show you the final stitching, even though I'm using black thread on a black project. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to end my stitching exactly where I started. Let's put our needle down. And now I need to stitch. I've already stitched this inside. You can see that stitching right here. Now I need to stitch the outside edge still on the black fabric. So I'm going to turn my work around by pivoting. I'm just going to pivot this whole moon So now when I go down and across, I'm still on the black fabric. My straight stitch is still going on the yellow fabric. But the bulk of my work is over here to my right hand side. So let me just tighten up that camera in that position so you can see it a little bit better. Sorry if you get a little seasick when I'm moving my camera, but I've got to get that in a position that you can see the stitching. So I've taken about 5 minutes to stitch that inside curve, and it's taken me another 5 minutes or so to do this outside curve. So I would guess about 10, or if you go slowly, maybe 15 minutes per moon, and we have 17 moons. So yes, if you only are able to stitch for 20 minutes a day, you might only get 1 or 2 moons done per day. But I get into a meditative state when I start stitching. I could do this all day long. I find it so relaxing to do this stitching. And I'm just coming up to the end here so I can show you what 10 minutes of stitching looks like, and we can start to gauge how much time it's going to take us to complete this entire project. Now I have just finished my stitching. I'm going to let the machine cut my thread and bring it to the back. And then I only have my initial thread right up here on top that I have to bury my thread and bring it to the back so I can end my threads beautifully. So there you have it. There is our blue moon block. So let me come back to you on the camera so you can see that completed blue moon block with all of the stitching done. Let me get that up close to the camera. And you can even see that stitching on the black fabric. Now, what you might also see are a few little threads here and there where a little thread poked out from the edge of my black applique. So I've got a little black thread right there. I'm just going to take my reverse action tweezers. I'm going to grab that black thread and cut under it with my curved edge snips, and that's going to control any fraying that happened before I did the stitching. Now that the stitching is done, no fraying is ever going to happen around that edge because the stitching holds those edges in. Well, if you like what you saw today and you want to make the Blue Moons quilt, that quilt is in my book, Hearts and More Rotary Cut Applique. I will show you the completed quilt. So if you missed me last time, here is the quilt that we are making. And it's a very straightforward, fast and easy quilt to make. We're going to make 17 of these blocks. We're going to set them with an alternating plain solid fabric block. We're going to put on 3 borders, and I'll be doing that next week with you to assemble this whole quilt. So after 3 weeks and a little bit of homework in between, we're going to get our Blue Moons quilt ready to lay out and assemble in next week's session. I think I'm here next week. Let me think about that. No, next week I'm actually heading to Quiltville. So I won't be able to finish up this quilt with you in the next session. And I need to get it done for my guild. So I'll probably be working on this quilt in between, maybe in our design club next week. Definitely in our all-day sit and sew that we have for our members on the third Friday of this month. So I'll be working on this on my own. I won't be able to show you because I'll be driving to Quiltville next week. So there will be no sewing in slippers next week, but I will continue to work on this. I'll do a little bit of video and then I'll consolidate the whole Blue Moons quilt into one video. All right. Any questions out there? Any comments from the group here? Good morning, Mary Pop from Michigan. Yes, you're in the middle of an ice storm. You've been without power since Friday. Oh my gosh. All of your trees are broken and have fallen down. Oh, Mary, I'm so sorry that you're going through an ice storm this late in the season. It's always heartbreaking when that happens. I hope you get your power back soon. I've been without power since Friday. Okay, it looks like you're back on because you're here on the Facebook Live with us. Okay. Great organizing ideas. Thank you, Elaine. I was really excited when I found those magnetic products that work so beautifully with the Husky table that I use. Beautiful quilt. You did the runner, but you're looking forward to doing a full-size quilt. That's on Janie's quilt. Wonderful. You can certainly do a full-size quilt in our next workshop. You missed something. Was the magnetic strip on the electric strip? Yes, yes. That is the big advantage of this electric power strip from Power Freight Tools. It has magnets attached to the back that are super duper strong. So I'm going to be able to put that anywhere there's metal on this table, and I've just put it under the table right here where there's a big metal bar. So I can attach that with the magnets, and it is just fabulous. I really wish I could angle that camera down a little bit more, but you can see how easily it comes on and off, yet it's strong. It's not going to come on and off so easily that it's going to be a problem. Now, I have no idea why this is here. I wonder if this is made to fit on like a 2x4 or something. But what I love about this power strip is not only does it have the surge protector, it's got 5 power outlets, and it has these 2 USB ports. So I'll be able to charge my phone, I'll be able to charge my iPad and use this while it's attached right there to the bottom on my table. Super, super nice product. I'm going full screen so you can see better, Vicki. Yes, your table looks similar to yours, but I feel it is narrow. All right, my table is a nice big table. I just love it. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. On Wednesday and Thursday this week, we do have a demo days. You can go to demo days and you can go to my website and sign up for demo days, or you can just copy and paste this link. Get started with rotary cut applique when you watch demo days. There will also be some nice little specials during demo days and some free gifts that I give away. So I hope you can join me for demo days. Go run right over to my website if you want to make the Blue Moons quilt with me. You'll need the Hearts and More large templates. So the large Hearts and More templates will give you the 5-inch curve and the 4-inch curve you need to make the Blue Moons quilt. Then you can grab your Hearts and More book that has the pattern for the quilt inside and many other patterns as well. So we'll be going through some of these other book patterns in our Sewing in Slippers sessions so that if you grab the book, you'll be able to get started with some of these quilts. Now, the cover quilt is my Cafe clamshell quilt, and I've been collecting fabric to make more kits for Cafe clamshells. So if you've been waiting for one of these kits, I do have some kits now available on the website. So thank you for joining me for Sewing in Slippers. I hope you've had fun today. I've had a great time spending my morning with you, and I look forward to seeing what you can get done in just 25 minutes a day. More applique, more piecing, more beautiful quilts. Bye, everyone.